Well, Natalie Malgas attended the mass funeral, joins me now live from Scenery Park. Natalie, South Africans who are watching this funeral online on TV screens, of course, have a lot to say about how today's proceedings unfolded. But perhaps give us a sense of what the community that was there, that was part of that service, how did they receive this initiative by government?
The families of the victims, Kathy, are quite excited, really. They've welcomed these initiatives and these very pointed solutions offered by the police minister when they heard that senior task teams have been assigned this case to try and find out exactly what happened, because right now it's still really undetermined how these young people died. That was really the chief thing that we heard from these families. We want closure, and we want those responsible, whoever they may be, across the board, across a series of stakeholders, to be held to account. They are also quite interested in one of the suggestions that the President made about raising the legal drinking age in South Africa. We heard from some community members, not necessarily the families of the victims, but other residents, those who live around taverns and live in the communities where this is not an uncommon sight or an uncommon occurrence, especially over the weekend and during the holiday time. Those community members were too excited about the idea that there'd be stronger regulation and monitoring on who is allowed to buy and be served alcohol. We also spoke to the family of one of the victims. In fact, we spoke to a sister who was saying the chief thing she wanted to hear today, sitting at this funeral, was to hear what happened to her young brother. He was only 16 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him, and she really wanted, this funeral would have offered the closure that she wanted if they could have told her just that at the very least. In fact, this is what a representative of the Bikiso family had to say.
I still want the closure of what happened, what makes my brother died on that day, because I really want to know. It really hurts me so painful. In this funeral, I'm feeling much better because I went on each step that we must take to organize things for his funeral, and this Saturday we'll be burying him. So my heart is still painful, and I'm still thinking about him. I can't forget. He loves playing soccer, and he said to me he wants to be a social worker. He likes to help people, even in the community. And sometimes he was shopping in the veg project up in Wilsonia. So he was a young person, loves his family, and he was a very hard boy. And he used to say to me, "Sisi, please do this. We must do things together to provide our family and my parents." He wished my mom and my dad not to work. He wanted him to work for us.
Natalie, South Africans are also reflecting again on the decision to have, those 21 empty coffins part of this service. Has government talked at all about what the thinking behind it was?
We heard from the Buffalo City municipality that said this was a symbolism, and a striking one at that. The families had decided to not have those coffins filled with their children's bodies. They had opted to not have them displayed. In fact, the exact words they used was paraded for the public. So they opted for empty coffins instead as part of the symbolism of 21 young people who died in this tavern tragedy. And the families, too, were welcoming of the fact that government had offered to host this funeral and foot the bill for the funeral, many saying that they didn't know how they were going to do that themselves because they simply couldn't have afforded to do so. So this was just one of the strategies that they were happy to abide by out of respect for the lives lost. In fact, we're currently standing at the Enyoveni Tavern, and just a little earlier we saw at least 2 families come through here to lay wreaths and pay their lasting respects I understand that there were a series of cultural ceremonies also hosted here. The families explained that this was a process to collect the souls of the deceased and to lead them into their resting place. All part of the events of today, part of the events to try and get as much closure as they can, knowing that there's still that crucial link in this puzzle piece as to what caused their children's death.
All right, Natalie Malgas, let's leave it there for tonight. She's out in the Eastern Cape tracking that story.